Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week, I bring on an interesting thought leader from a really cool industry who's doing really amazing game-changing things. And this week's episode is no different. I am so delighted to have Sarah Sclarandis, a founder and CEO of Sclarandis, which is this awesome shoes and accessories company. And I hope I didn't butcher her last name. She's smiling. It's a good thing. So, Sarah, so glad to have you here.
It's so good to be here, Laura.
So, every time I have a guest on the show, I always start with the exact same question, and it's always fascinating to see where it goes when I ask this question. So, Sarah, what was your first job?
My first ever job as a kid?
Sure, we'll go with that one.
I was actually living in the UK, and I went for strawberry picking. Strawberry picking was my little side job during the holidays. That was my first ever side job.
How old were you? I
was probably 13 years old, and it was backbreaking, but I still love strawberries.
So how do you end up picking strawberries? I need a job because I'm 13 years old.
Well, we lived in England in an area where there were a lot of strawberry fields, and so that's what you did.
So like child labor.
It was child labor. You could either go pick strawberries, or I was too young to go work as a server at the local pub, but I did that as well, and babysitting. But strawberry picking was my first ever little paid job.
And what did you learn from that?
I learned that it was an incredibly tough job, and I always looked at fruits and vegetables in a very different way. And I just always thought about how they get from the field to the supermarket to the plate.
So that's interesting, because it still holds true, because every person I interview, it's always the same thing. That first job instills a couple of pieces in your thought process that when you get to where you currently are, all play a role in it. And considering that your shoes, which are so fabulous,
thank you,
and fit amazingly well, are so well made, and you think about that same process of how they're designed, how they're made, and how you bring them to essentially the plate or to us to buy them is kind of the same thing. So you see, it always plays well.
Well, it always made me think, and I think that is true, that stayed with me. It always made me think about the people who did that for a living. For me, that was a little part-time job as a kid to make a little bit of money. But for the people who did that, I mean, they were seasonal fruit pickers or vegetable pickers. That was the job. So it always stayed with me to appreciate other people's work, whatever that work might be, because you have to do it well. And if it's not done well, you're not, it's not going in the sort of supply chain. And it doesn't matter whether you're making a car, whether you're making shoes, whether you're working in a restaurant, whether you're whatever kind of work, there's always a process, and that really stayed with me. So I think it's the respect of other people's work, profession, labor, whatever that may be.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So let's talk about what you do now, because it's kind of awesome, and we'll be sharing all the links in the show notes to shop and buy all sorts of fabulous shoes, because, again, they're amazing. Thank you.
So I always, as a kid, had a complete passion for shoes, always, ever since I was probably 5 years old. And I would drive my mother absolutely crazy because I just wanted to go to shoe stores during, the weekend.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, except my mother wasn't so keen on that. I was born in Italy. My mother's from Egypt. My father's Italian. And that passion, just all I could dream about is one day I'm going to grow up and I am going to have my own money and I can buy my own shoes, and no one's going to tell me, no, you can't buy that. Yes, you can. Yes, you have to wear those. So that was the first little seed. Later on, we left Italy when I was around 11, moved to the UK, and it was really my mother who said, I think you need to be a shoe designer. So we have to figure out that early. I mean, by then I was probably 14, 15.
Okay, so that early.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
and so we started looking. She actually wrote to the Design Council, the British Design Council in England. That's where we lived, and said, what schools are there? There were only 2 schools. And I went to one of them, which was De Montfort University, and it still is the only university that has a shoe design course that is at a university level. So I graduated from school. The British system's a little bit different. At 16, then I went to college, to a design college, and then I went to university. And it was my only on the application, you had to put your first, second, third choice, and I only had one choice.
Shoes.
That's it. It was Leicester University, and I remember at the interview they said, well, what are you going to do if you don't get in? I said, I'll just try again next year, or figure another way to design shoes.
Because I'm going to do this.
Because I'm going to do this. And that was that. I got in, thankfully. I graduated, and then I thought, well, really I want to go back to Italy. That's where I want my career to start. So I started freelancing for this little tiny factory in the Marche area. And then my first big job was working for Benetton. And they had various shoe brands. They also owned a big shoe company. And that's really where I started working in the business in Italy. And
awesome.
It was great. The design studio was, a few meters away from the guys that cut the pattern, and then they were a few meters away from the factory. You went down the staircase, and there's this fabulous factory, and they'd call you on the phone and say, Sarah, I need you. Come, I don't understand how you want the stitching. You want it like this, you want it like that. So you really worked hand in hand, cheek to cheek with the experts, and some of those people had been doing it since they were 16 years old.
And it's just an art for them.
It's an art. It's a passion. I think the same passion I have for shoes. The guy that's making the heels has that same passion. It's mostly men actually that work in some of the processes, the heel making, the last making, which I'll go into, and then in the stitching, it's mostly women. So it's interesting how.
Huh. Why is that delineation? Is that because one, it seems more manly or more feminine, or is it just?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think traditionally, even in ready-to-wear, there are a lot more women who are stitching. Maybe because traditionally, culturally, women are the ones who have made clothes, although tailors are usually men. Right? So, but I think at home, grandmothers were making the clothes for the rest of the family. So I think maybe it comes from that, seamstresses are generally women. But there are so many. So first of all, when you start start the process of shoemaking, obviously you have to think of what it is, what's the inspiration, what's inspiring me. I always think about what I want to wear and what I'm missing or what's missing, If everybody's doing cowboy boots and I'm not into the cowboy boot trend, what do I want to wear on my feet? And I always think about the end use. I always think about where am I going? I don't want to think too hard about my end use. I don't want to open my closet and go, oh, but that doesn't go with this and this doesn't go with that. So that's always my first thought. My second thought is what inspires me, and it can be a material. I go to leather shows. I live in New York, so you walk around and you see all kinds of...
It's your canvas.
It's a canvas. I mean, you see all kinds of people wearing all kinds of crazy outfits, and you go, oh my God, that's fabulous. I want something like that. So you have a canvas. You start sketching ideas, and then those sketches have to take form. But that is a process that is quite long. So generally the first thing is once I have an idea of what I want to do, I go to Italy where the shoes are made, and you always start with the last. So the last is the shape of the shoe. So if you have a pointy toe shoe or a round toe shoe, you have to go to a last maker. It's a bit like making a sculpture, really. You go to a last maker, and together you start with a last made of wood, and it's really the shape that your shoe is going to have. And they put car filler. I mean, this is how you start making shoes. You put car filler, and then together you kind of go, okay, this is the point you want, yes. And they start sanding it down and sanding it down. You go a little bit more, no, add a bit more car filler, let it dry. And so you're literally building a sculpture. So that is going to have the shape of the toe mostly that you want. And you obviously decide the heel height. And there are certain very technical parameters you use for fit, right? You can't go to a certain...
It can't be size 55.
well, but it also can't be so narrow that no foot would ever go in. So you obviously have certain parameters of how you build it. It's a bit like building a cake mold, right? You want a round cake? Well, you need a round tin. If you have a triangular cake, you have to build a triangular tin. So that's really the beginning. Once you do that, you go back to the factory, you build your first idea of a shoe, whether it could be a pump, a boot, and then you take a look at it and you go, oh, no, I think I want to take a little bit more off or add a little bit more on. So once you have that, then you go to the heel maker. So you can either work together with the heel maker, also with a sketch, and say, I want my heel to be, this shape.
This pointy, this silhouette.
This silhouette, I want it to be, kitten heel, or I want it to be, or a big, the height is already determined.
Oh. Okay.
You have to determine the height when you make the last.
Oh.
You have to determine that. And, I want my heel to be like a golf ball, whatever it is, and you build it together with the last. It's a bit like building a chair. You have the shape of the chair, and then you have to build the legs. The legs is the heel. And then with that, you have your basic structure of the shoe. Now that heel could be wrapped in leather, it could be lacquered, it can have a wood finish, it can be shiny metal finish. I mean, there's endless possibilities. So once you have all your pieces together, the factory will then, the sample room will then make your first prototype, and then they have to make the outsole. So you have many, many components that all come together. You have leather that comes from a tannery that's in one location, the heel maker, the last maker, the insole maker, the shoebox maker, the tissue paper. I mean, it's like so many different things that all have to come together.
To put one pair of shoes.
To put one pair of shoes. And then making, the actual shoemaking has so many different processes, machinery. Shoes even go into an oven. Most people don't know this. To be set.
How does a shoe go into an oven?
So once you make your upper, which is the top of the shoe, so let's say you have a lace up. Once you make that, and it's lasted over your last, which is the shape, and
just
then
fit it on top of it.
Yeah, and then you, in order for it to set, it goes into. It looks like a baker's oven. It just goes into a conveyor belt. And it's set at a certain temperature, and then it goes out of the oven and it sets. And then from that, you will then put glue. You glue the outsole. You attach the heel. But that's something that most people don't know. So many materials, of course, leather is very resistant, but there are other materials that cannot go through that process, or they will sustain a significant stress in that process. It's a lot of stress that these materials go through. So the better the quality, the less, the better quality leathers. It's a bit like, I always like to compare things to other things. If you have a leather couch and you're sitting on it thousands of times, if it's a really good quality leather, the leather couch is going to age much better. It's like your skin. You take care of it. You put cream on it. You don't sit under the sun. No wrinkles, all right? If you don't take care of it, you're going to get more wrinkles. So most people don't realize how intricate shoemaking really is.
No, because it's fascinating. Because I'm like, you think about it. You see a shoe on the shelf in a store, and you're like, oh, great looking shoe. And you have no idea that it starts as this piece of wood. Is this on video anywhere? Or did you ever shoot a video of this?
I have actually started shooting some videos. Yes, I've started shooting, and now we have to piece it all together. And it's fascinating. It's completely fascinating. I love it. The process of making shoes, I will never get tired of it. Awesome. And what I also love about the process is, especially as a designer, I always ask the experts. I have my opinion, but if I go to the heel maker and together, I love to work with the person that's helping you to design the heel, because you kind of do it together and you go, oh, I don't know, is that too heavy looking for the... Oh no, I think that's, I think that actually might be quite great. Or it's just so great to ask the opinion of the expert.
People who've actually been doing it for years.
They've been doing it for years and they love what they're doing. So often what happens when I'm in Italy is I'll go to let's say it's the guy that does the heel finishes. He doesn't even do the heels. He just does the finishes. And you start working and you describe and you go, I think I have something you might like. And he'll go off and look in a bucket, in a drawer, someplace. And he'll come back with a vintage heel from 20, 30 years before. And he goes, I think this is what you're looking for. And you go, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And that's how you build things together. And that's what I love about shoemaking in Italy. It's a passion it's transcended over generations. People often say, what's the difference, so what's the difference between something made in another country or made in Italy? The Italians really have a knack for design. The Renaissance started in Italy, There's a reason for that. I also believe that each country has its thing. You don't come back from Italy and go, oh, I had the best burger. I mean, that's not what you might have, but every country has, one country might be, engineering, technology. Another one is the music. Another one, every country has a thing.
Italy's the shoes.
Italy's definitely shoes, fashion, design. But it's really considered a craft. Other countries do it, and they do a great job, but it's not as much of a craft. It's not done with soul and passion. And that's what I find. Of course, I'm Italian, and I grew up there, but that's what I find, that the experience of working with these fabulous craftswomen, is that they just put amazing passion into it. So there's always it's always a collaboration between all these people. It's not just someone like myself saying to the manufacturer, oh, no, you make it like this and that's it, that's how I want it, just do it. It really truly is a craft.
Well, it's cool because it's like the beginnings of what we talk about entrepreneurship, where it's, you've got to find your mentors, the best people who can help you, who've done this before, but then it takes a team, and like whoever is specialized in certain aspects of it in order to create something new. And it sounds like the Italian shoemaking community is like this amazing collaboration of these really amazing entrepreneurs and craftspeople who all come together to make this incredible shoe.
Yeah.
So so you were born to do this, clearly. What did you do before you started your shoe line?
After I graduated from university as a shoe designer, I moved back to Italy, worked for Benetton, and then I had an opportunity to come here, and I really thought, I'll just stay in the US for a year or two. I mean, my life is, I have no plans to really move there permanently. And then I came here and I started working for various shoe companies. I worked for a very traditional American company called G.H. Bass, the penny loafer. And that's another whole different way of making shoes, that sort of traditional craft that was still made in Wilton, in the north of Maine.
Really?
And that was hand making of another different type. I learned so much there. And then I had an opportunity to come to New York, and I was head designer at Banana Republic, who at the time they were making all their shoes in Italy. So I was going back and forth to Italy. Even Bass was making a lot of shoes in Italy. And I later had an opportunity to work for Juicy Couture and launch their shoe collection. That's what they wanted to add, and those shoes were made in Italy. So I was lucky that all these companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just remember Juicy Couture in the windows on Fifth Avenue with these amazing tracksuits.
Yeah.
I just remember going, oh my God, these tracksuits. I don't think I was probably like a freshman or something in college, walking down Fifth Avenue to see that store and going, really?
It was
their shoes were made in Italy.
They had a lot of,
wow.
Especially in the beginning, we had a lot of fabulous shoes and boots made in Italy. And then, of course, the market wanted things that were more fun and, with embroideries and dangly things and charms. And but
this is an abomination.
Yeah. And then I was at Donna Karan at DKNY for quite a few years. So in all these companies, I learned so many different things. In some, it was more managerial. Others, it was really learning more about how to build a collection that went from super casual to a lot more dressy. I traveled. I mean, in all these companies, they all made footwear in various parts of the world. I mean, and some were as far away as, I don't know. I mean, there was Brazil, there was Indonesia, China. I think I went to El Salvador, Puerto Rico. So, I mean, I managed to travel I traveled to so many great places. Vietnam. So in each place, you learn a different technique or a different... you just learn so many different things, and so those experiences were really gold. I couldn't do what I do now without having done all those steps. And in each one, I met some fantastic people, and I've always been very good at keeping in touch with people, and that's something.
I preach this daily.
Always. I mean, obviously, there are people along the way that you have a certain affinity to, so it's just very easy. And working in the same industry, and it's not a huge industry, there are certain times of the year where there are trade shows that you just meet up, keep in touch. And for me, it was something I always wanted to do. After having worked for all these different companies, I did want to build my own. Because I love what I do so much.
You were built for this.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I walk around and I look at people's feet, and sometimes people think, "Oh, why is she looking? She's looking down at me." And like, well, I'm just looking at your feet.
I'm just curious to see what your situation is. I make them all daily, and so you decide to make the leap from going to a safe corporate job to becoming an entrepreneur. Was there a moment where you're like, I'm going to go do this?
So there was really an interim moment in between the corporate career and the safety net, which was obviously having a paycheck. I did branch out and started consulting. So that was something that was a little scary, but work came. And so all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is not so scary. I wanted to do this, and look, I'm doing it. So then the next step, which is the scariest, which is to completely leap of faith and say, I'm just going to do this. That was sort of definitely scary, kept me up at night, terrifying. But I think had I not had the interim of consulting for a couple of years, I wouldn't have gone into it straight from the corporate job. You eased
yourself into it.
I eased myself into it, yes. And so at some point I just said to myself, whatever is on that list of things I really want to do in life, this is one of them. You either stop talking about it or you do it.
Just do it.
And I thought, all right, just do it. And it's quite terrifying. Still is.
Yeah, such as life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, very terrifying.
Anyone who tells you that being an entrepreneur is easy, no matter what the job is, you're like, that's at first it's not an entrepreneur. They're just making that up because it's always just, oh my God. And so tell us more about your shoe line now, because the one thing I really love about your shoes, and I'm mildly biased because I have a couple of pairs, is that for someone who doesn't want to wear a big heavy heel, you've kind of got that magic number for the heel. I think it's like 2.5 or 2.
It's 75 millimeters, which is about 3 inches, a little under 3 inches. Yeah,
like a touch under 3, but it's a perfect height.
Yeah,
and they're just, and you didn't go with like a typical pointed toe. It's more of an almond shaped toe, and that means so much because me, we were talking about, I have bigger feet. And so it's hard for me to find shoes that, like, when they're pointy, don't feel like, ow, my toes.
Right.
So what made you come up with the designs that you have that are in your collection?
So one of the things that I really felt was needed in, really for myself, I actually ended up having 2 foot surgeries, both big toes, not bunions, but I had bone spurs that was so painful.
Real bone spurs?
Yes. And so those were just, I partly had probably done it to myself because I like to walk around in heels everywhere. And that probably wasn't the smartest thing. And partly is DNA. There are men who absolutely don't wear any kind of heels who have exactly the same thing. So, but I think after having kids, your feet do change a little bit. They just change a bit. Might change shape, size. Mine. One
of the things that terrifies me about becoming a parent one day.
It's okay. It's worth it. It's worth it. And so I just felt like, gosh, everything. I love beautifully made shoes. I like things that are in a beautiful quality. I would like to have shoes like that I can walk everywhere and that can fit into my life, and I don't have to think too hard. I can rush out, take the kids to school, and then come here and talk to you, go to a meeting, or maybe meet a friend later and have a bite to eat. Like I just don't want to carry shoes with me. I mean, that's really what it came down to. I don't want to have a bag carrying, all these different shoes.
I think it's interesting because I feel like that's a New York thing that people in other places don't understand. That, like, women in New York literally live this double life.
Yes.
Whether it's at their office or it's in their bag.
Yeah.
Like, at their office, there is a whole shoe collection underneath their desk of heels that they will wear in the office but won't wear outside the building.
Absolutely.
Or they're carrying them in these like cute little tote bags in their bags, which is why everyone's bag in New York is much bigger than anywhere else, because inside that bag are expensive shoes.
Yeah.
And then you'll see women, and we all have seen this, like right outside a building,
taking off,
one hand on the building to hold themselves up, and then the other one like shoving the heel on and like putting their foot in right before they walk into a meeting. And you're like, this is so batting but like. It's decidedly a New York thing and a city thing because we're always in the go and we don't have time to like have a shoe that doesn't fit us properly. So like, all right, I'll wear flats until I'm right before the building, and I throw a pair of heels. And when I get out, I'm gonna put these flats back on because the shoes are killing me.
And that was really the inspiration, because I have to say, when I moved to New York, I would. My first job was on Madison Avenue in the 30s, so it was right. Lots of subways there, and I would see all these women dressed really prettily, and then they had these big sneakers. Now it's a sneaker trend. You see trendy sneakers, but they weren't that trendy back then. I just thought, why don't you why? And that was really one of the inspirations. So for me, when it came to designing, and I also want things that are more timeless. That again, I really relate to furniture. You don't change your couch every 6 months, a year, right? You want something that's beautiful, that's clean, that's crisp lines, that's comfortable. And I think of the shoes that I design are made with. I always tell the factory, like the leathers have to be soft, like they have to be. You're putting them on your feet, which is one of the most important parts of your body, and. I just, another thing that inspired me, and my husband, one of his favorite things to do on a date night is to just walk around, which is probably not my most favorite thing to do, because I like to know that we're going to go to a certain place and, we have a reservation, and I know that I have to walk 5 minutes or jump into a cab or a subway. And I always makes me think is that if my husband says, let's walk around, can I walk around in these shoes? Can I walk around in these shoes? And he's really the one who also gave me a big push and said, you just have to do it. Don't, I know you're scared, but just do this thing. You got to make these shoes. And so that's really, all these things came into place, and when it came to designing, I didn't want, or I felt I really wanted something that was very streamlined, that was also timeless, and that you could, wear time after time. And for me, the ballerina I've designed, the Nina ballerina, is something that's like very pretty on the foot. It's super comfortable. It has a little bit of a wedge, and you can just walk around for hours and hours. And that, I always think about, the walking around and those date nights I may have walking around.
Of course. And so, question for you. So, do you plan on doing a sneaker? Because my love affair of shoes similarly started when I was a little kid, and I was just fascinated by all things shoes. And my mom, she's like a size 8.5, 8.5. And I quickly outgrew her shoes. So I was like, oh no, I can't get my mom's shoes. I'm going to have to get my own. So I got to figure out ways to get my own shoes. And so I was obsessed with all things shoes. And so I've had every heel under creation. Obviously there are Louboutins and Nellos in my closet. However, the things I wear now are all sneakers. It's really crazy to me because I literally find myself making the choice to find fashionable, affordable sneakers that nobody else has. And I think this has been I want to say the last 3 years for me. I've gone from doing boots that were always kind of cool and different styles, different heels, and I have those still. But there is something unique about this sneaker trend, and I'd love to hear what you think about it.
I think,
as we both wear sneakers today.
Yes, I think the sneaker trend is fabulous because there are just so many more options. I mean, there have been sneaker trends before, but I mean, when I was growing up, it was the Adidas ROM. That was the sneaker everybody has. But now there are so many sneakers, so interesting, so many different materials. Some are crazy, some are not.
There's just
there's a scary triple, quadruple soles, Gucci with all kinds of fabulous studded things. I mean, some of it is silly.
Garish.
It's not for me. But I think once women start, and then they're wearing very pretty floral dresses with fabulous sneakers. So I think sneakers are probably not going away. So it's definitely in the back of my head, and I do think about it. Then the next thing is, okay, so then there are so many sneakers, then it has to be something that's different of what's offered out there. And there are fabulous sneakers offered out there from amazing brands. So, I mean, from the athleisure brand. So it's definitely in the back of my head. And again, I would have to think about how do you make it stand out? Is it the shoe meets the sneaker that has a little bit of a twist, a more sophisticated sneaker?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I found interesting, that I've tried to look for in terms of the ones that I wear, because I don't want it, because I go a lot from day to night, because I find myself running around all day long.
Yeah.
And it's I don't want to wear something that looks like a regular tennis shoe.
Right.
That doesn't do the trick. And usually black. And so it's I'm not wearing multiple colors. It's black. And however you do it, needs to be black leather, black suede. That's kind of where I'm sitting. So just a nugget for you, Sarah.
Yes.
Sneakers.
Something else on my plate.
Oh, sorry. So what would you tell 25-year-old Sarah now that you knew you were a child, I'm a new designer, and you made that happen. It's very rare that people know when they're a little kid, this is the job I want to have, and then literally go and do all the right steps to actually do it and then be successful at it. So what would you say? So you're 25 years old. You may still be in Italy at this point.
Well, that was only last year. I turned 25.
True. That was true. You're a prodigy. This is indeed true. But yeah, what would you say that you
So
learned all this time?
I would, two things. First of all is stop worrying. Everything will be okay, so don't worry so much. And the other probably very important thing is be open to all the other aspects of the business you're working in or on. So when in all these years of working for all these amazing companies, of course I was designing, so I focused on designing and the process of shoemaking up until, and production, I didn't pay as much attention, and I probably didn't have the time either, but I didn't pay as much attention on, well, what do the salespeople do? What do the PR people do? Exactly. I mean, of course I know what the job is, but why don't I sit into some of those meetings?
Right.
I should have perhaps volunteered some of my time and said, can I sit into a couple more meetings? Can you teach me how to do that? I'd love to spend 2 weekends working in a store and really see the whole process. So I think that is the part where I had it all there at my fingertips, but no one, of course, suggested, oh, you should go spend some, more time. And I'm sure if you asked your boss, hey, can I go on a traveling road trip, a sales trip with some of the salespeople, they probably wouldn't have said no. So I think I would tell that to my younger self, like, be open to all the other things that are happening around you. Sometimes you don't have the time. I mean, you're busy, like constantly on a deadline. But I probably would have learned so many other things that I'm learning now, but I could have had access to those years ago.
Well, I think it's now the trend that everyone's a hybrid. And that's probably in the last 5 to 8 years where being a hybrid has been embraced. Because before it was like, this is your job and you don't do anything else. And now it's very much like everyone's looking for employees who can be a lot of different things, who know how to do a lot of different things. Like, you know how to do Instagram, but you also can be a painter, but you're also a photographer, but then you also can write poetry. And I think that's a big way of looking at it, but I think it's similar to what you said, taking a sneak peek what's happening with the sales team, and you're the designer, so you want to get inspired by seeing what this entire PR process looks like. So when you're thinking about designing the shoes, that kind of launches in your head. And I think now, especially as entrepreneurs, we become hybrids because you have to be. You become chief executive of everything. Of everything,
yeah. And I think that's where it comes. I definitely had and I would always keep my ears and eyes open, but I do remember meetings where, the design team would come away going, oh, those people in marketing, they don't get it. Well, oh, the salespeople, they said this, but then now all of that is coming back to me because there are certain things that may happen or someone might say, and you go, of course I get that, maybe the shoe's not displaying in a way that when I designed it, I thought about it, how it would look on my feet, but you also have to think how would it look in a store, on a shelf, or in a magazine, or or Instagram in this case, So that's why you need all those different hats, and that's why it's important to specialize in something, but you need to also wear try those different hats and be it's back to the process, and it's back to where, understanding someone else's work, because then you understand, yes, I've done a great job, I did these shoes, they're fabulous, but then they have to sit on someone's table in a meeting as they're trying to recreate that story and tell it to a buyer of a department store, and maybe they're having a hard time because you put all these colors together that they don't tell a story, Whatever that, I think it's so important to understand all the different processes. It's like you really have to be, the chef in the kitchen, but you also have to be the waiter, but you also have to be the server, but you also have to be the end client. And I think if you can at least try all the different roles, you'll have a better understanding, and it's going to help the end result.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's so very important because now, as an entrepreneur, the world is completely different for you because you're like, because now you've got Instagram where people can literally buy your products. How's that world been for you from transitioning from being an executive to then becoming a designer who has to sort of start from scratch?
So I've been very lucky that I have had definitely a lot of people along the way giving me great advice. I've never been shy to reach out to someone and say, oh, help me, I don't know how to do this. There have certainly been some, I'm not a Google expert. I'm certainly not an Instagram expert. So dealing with all the new technology, I think when it came to making shoes, I went back and contacted people I worked with in Italy, all my contacts and the pool of people that I had a great relationship with. So that part was not as hard. The harder part then comes to, then creating a brand, creating an image, putting, I'm self-funded and a very limited budget. So I've had a lot of favors. A lot of people have just said, I'll do this for you. I think the technology part, the social media part is actually being quite frustrating because there are things that haven't worked or people go, oh, you just have to do this, it's so easy. You go, well, no, that doesn't work, or that isn't compatible with this, or, we just had a ridiculous issue on trying to have the Instagram selling app. And it just wasn't working, kept getting denied. And I figured there was a tiny little glitch. It was a word. It's what, tiny little thing. And that tiny little thing was that, yes, we had some hidden other little glitch. It took us months to figure it out. But that we couldn't get anybody to help us. And just trial and error. You go, do this, take that, do this. So it's definitely a challenge. It is I feel like every other person is an entrepreneur, and that's great. Great and terrible. It's great, but it's also, it's also challenging. It's a very crowded space. I'm, for now I'm sort of, I'm at that point of I'm going to keep doing what I do it because I love doing it. And, I hope the force will be with me as we keep going.
Totally. So question for you. So what made you decide to go into bags as well? Because
that's my other fetish. It's just, that's always been shoes and bags. But I never had I guess I always loved bags. But I never had fantasies about I want to make money so I can go buy my own bag. It was the shoe, I can't. But shoes and bags have always gone hand in hand, and most of my friends will tell you that. Oh yeah, she always had a bag thing. So yes, and that's sort of, and it's part of accessories and leather goods, and it's just something I've always loved. I did have when I was young, in between going back to Italy, getting my first job, I did do a stint at a very beautiful accessory boutique, and so that just added to it. Yes.
And so you've got this really amazing collection of flats, heels, and bags. And for you, what's been the thing that has made you the proudest?
Ooh, I think having dreamt about this for so many years and just always thinking that it was going to be, impossible to do and so hard to do. I think getting over that fear of doing it, because it is very hard to do, and
it's a process.
It's a process, and it is excruciating, and also, I have a responsibility to my husband and my kids, and so it takes a lot. So I think I'm probably just proud of myself for doing it. And it's, and there's there isn't a phase that I could say, oh, this has been so easy, or anybody could do this. It's a process, and there's a lot of ups and downs. But I think for me, it's literally the fear factor. It's been, like, that's it. No matter the result, I can say, I did it, I'm doing it, I'm proud of myself, and the rest, we shall see.
Awesome. So, of course, Sarah, that was a fantastic way to end the interview. Perfect sound bites. It was so lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to put links on the show notes so you all can buy these amazing products and learn more about Sarah. And
you can write to me through the website and ask me anything.
And have her just wax poetic about the brilliance of making shoes in Italy, because I could talk to her for hours about this. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. It's been great.
Cheers. And that's our show. Thanks, everyone.